Welcome to the Sports Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Luer, and today we're going to have a very interesting conversation about the world of blockchain, tokenization, and many other pieces of the crypto world with a gentleman calling in from Malta, Mr. Alex Dreyfus. Welcome to the podcast, Alex.
Hi, Marcus. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I've had my own experience with the world of ICOs and tokenization a few years ago, so I'd love to share this and really hear your stories here. But before we get there, let me do a quick intro, and sort of a maybe quick description of how I would explain it to our listeners here. You are truly a serial entrepreneur. You've done several businesses, and some you exited successfully. We'll touch on that later. In the, what you call yourself a net-preneur, net as an internet, in the tech space there, you've been in poker and sports betting, and now, of course, you're known for being Mr. ChiliZ here and Socios, which is what we'll obviously be talking about later, and the cool things you guys are doing there in fan engagement through fintech. But before we go there, I always love to start with a bit how you got first in the, your first business. And in your case, it wasn't necessarily sports, but how you got into your first company, and which you then, of course, sold. Start there a bit,
Sure. So obviously, I'm French with this accent, and therefore I started in France from Lyon, my home city. Right. What happened is I've been very, very lucky because I got my first computer when I was 6, meaning that I started to actually learn how to write and read when I had my first computer. Right. And I became a geek and a kind of a programmer and all that stuff for all my youth. And when I was like 14, 15, so when was that? So it was in 93 or something like that. I started really to have my first BBS, bulletin board system, which was like an online forum at that time. And I'm talking 1993, online forum that worked with modem. You need to have like a RTC modem that you connect to your computer that goes to your phone line. And you are like, beep, beep, all of this. Yeah. And there was no email and internet at that time. And I started to have my own BBS or forum or community literally in my home. And I was lucky enough to have a father that can support that. And then in 1995, when I was exactly 18, I actually left school, or rather I quit school without any degree or baccalaureate or A-level or whatever. I actually left school without the authorization of my parents, which was the only times where my mother gave me a slap in the face because I came back home one day and she told me, because I was not a good student, I was the last one, more or less. I came back home, my mother said, hey, we hired a new math guy for homework, etc. And I said, what for? I don't need it anymore. I don't go to school. And boom, I got my slap. But that's okay. She's over it now. And at that time in 1995, which was the beginning of the internet in every single way, I created a company called MediaRex, MediaRtis, which was in Latin media artist and stuff. And it was at that time what you would call today a web agency. But at that time it was absolutely neither a web, neither agency. And my first job was actually to install internet in like big corporations. So I was in my home city in Lyon. I was going with a car. I was just 18, and I was installing a modem and a computer, standalone to a dedicated line for a €1 billion company or a small company to have their first internet access. Yes. And then I started to do websites, and then we grow this, and we sold that. We were 50-50 with a partner who was more commercial, and I was the tech guy. And we eventually sold the company to a Publicis in Lyon. And it became the kind of digital arm of their venture, of their Lyon offices. And then I really moved into my first baby, which was, I'm not going to go through the whole journey because that will take more than one podcast, but started in a baby called Webcity.com,
that's right.
Which was the online city guide in France, where in Lyon, in Paris, in Lille, in Marseille, in actually eventually 37 cities. And it was in the years, 1999, we raised the equivalent of at that time it was 12 million francs, but it will be 1.5 million euro in a traditional Serie A VC, like in the good years.
Yeah.
And I was 20 in 1999. I was 22. So it was very cool because I hired like 50, 60 people, was on the TV all the time. I was this young entrepreneur, blah, blah, blah. That was the good years. And but it didn't work well because we ended up going bankrupt. Or not we, I did go bankrupt. It's my fault. But the company actually, or the vision and the project survived. Eventually got acquired by a competitor that arrived after us, and then got merged with Yelp. And it's a very long story. But at that time, it was my first lesson is being right early is not being right. And most importantly, in most of this digital business, and that's true even today, the key is to be able to last longer, because there is always someone that's going to come after you doing the exact same thing. But if he comes after you after all your mistakes and he has more money than you at that point, then you're fucked.
Yep, and I do agree with that comment already, and I'll share one of my stories later when we get into the world of blockchain there. But yeah, that's a great entrepreneurial kickstart here from the age of 18. They're amazing. Now, before we move into the sort of the juicy part of what we want to talk about later, I would like to touch a bit on your poker days here. You've obviously had you got into what it's called online poker and sports betting there. I think the first company again was called Winamax, and later on you had Chili Gaming. Talk about that. I mean, that's it's a really unique space, and I'm sure lots of interesting learnings come out of that.
Oh yeah. So what happened is after when were we? We were in 2002. The company what's left of Webcity.com was merged. I left, etc. And actually, I was broke. I was completely broke at that time because as an entrepreneur, I didn't, especially in France at that time, it's not anywhere true. It's not true anymore. But you didn't have any social protection, so whatever you pay as a tax, it didn't give you any benefits in the future. But so I was broke. I worked for a few months. Actually, I worked for 1 year, I guess, for someone else, which was the first time and the last time in my life, to try to get a salary and actually to be able to get non-employment benefits. Right. And then I started to look at, hey, what should I do? What's my next move? And my next move became online gambling for a simple reason, or actually plenty of reasons. But the first one is, like everybody else in 2003, 2004, I thought that online gambling was bad, it's illegal, it's money laundering, that's a scam. And because I've never been a gambler myself, I just recall at that time the advertising of 888.com or casino.net, but I didn't really know about it. And then I educated myself a bit more about the business, the technology, and I realized that in France, it was unregulated. And my bet was, hey, it's not regulated today, but one day it will become regulated in France and in other countries. Yeah. So started to look at this business. I was broke, didn't have any cash, didn't have any money to invest and create anything, even myself. So I asked two friends of mine to join me to create Winamax. And we created the first sports book that was actually in a way targeting France, even though we were based in UK, at least officially. And we started with this. We got a license in UK, so that's 2004, 2005. Yeah. I think we launched at the time of May 2005 when there was Roland Garros. It was our first odds. And I was behind my computer. We were three. We were doing customer care. We were doing the odds. We were doing the settlement of the payment of matches. So every Saturday was a very painful job because because we were very small and didn't have a lot of liquidity. So when you have bettors that bet against you and it makes a lot of money, I'm clicking on button, and every time I click on the button, we are losing money. Yeah.
How would you set the odds? You were setting your own odds, or you were just copying it from the bigger players?
We were buying in from BetRadar at that time. Okay. And then we were just tuning a little bit based on some of our stuff. But it was a semi-manual process, and which, by the way, is the time where I realized that there was rigged match, because and I lived it for real, because I've seen people coming only on our platform to bet on very specific match and always winning, and then they were doing nothing else. And they were coming from Poland, from not Estonia, but some other countries, and it was fun. It was the early days, and then we started to move into the poker business. And for, I would say, personal reason, we had a clash with partners. We were 3. And because I didn't have cash, I was not able to actually buy them out. So I had to sell my shares. So I sold my shares at that time in 2006. And then I moved to Malta, where I reinvested my money into my other venture, which was Chili Gaming, which was more poker related. Okay. And we launched Chilipoker 2006, which was at that time what we call a skin or a white label. And we became pretty successful. Not successful, it was like a $10 million business or $10 million, but was okay. We were like 40 employees. And the more we were working into that, the more we developed our back-end solution, our technology, payment, bonuses, CRM, fraud, which is my background and the background of the people even working today here in Socios. And so became very much educated in regulation, payments, banking, and showing that eventually in a B2C business that is online poker, but it's the same in crypto and it's the same in the sports business. Yes. It's a consumer-facing industry where your job is to acquire users and to make sure that these users can pay on your platform, and to make sure that, of course, the product that you sell works and you have retention, you have affiliates and all that stuff. So did that for 2006. Did that for 6 years on my own. Then sold the business to a listed company in Vegas called Bally Technologies, and now it's Scientific Games. So it's the number 1, number 2 in terms of casino provider all over the world. And by doing this, we were the first non-American company to actually sign, and that was my baby actually. We signed. We were becoming the official platform provider to the first land-based casino in US that wanted to launch online gambling, and that was Golden Nugget, based in Vegas, New Jersey, and out of Houston. And so I spent like 2 years back and forth between Europe and US, thanks to the company that acquired me. So I did a lot, like, first I learned a lot about US, of course, as well, but I was doing a lot of education towards like senators and regulators and casino and stuff like this. It was very cool. Yeah. And eventually I really left and completely cashed out in 2014-ish. And I kept, actually, or rather I reinvested almost immediately in another poker-related business, which I still own 100%, called the Global Poker Index, GPI, or the handonmob.com, which is like the official ranking authority of all poker players in the world. All right. So if Marcus is playing in Macau tomorrow, or is playing in Las Vegas, or is playing in Berlin in a casino for poker tournaments that is like a decent size, this information is aggregated by us, and we give you a ranking. And Marcus becomes the number 150 top players in Germany. And it's kind of the ATP of poker, PGA of poker. It's really like this official ranking.
Okay, cool.
And I bought that, like invested a few millions of dollars on my own in this. The goal was actually, and that's how I came into sports, which also a bit one of your questions eventually, is we started to try to create a sport out of poker. Mm-hmm. So we own the ATP, we own the PGA of poker. Now we're going to create awards. So we created the American Poker Awards. We created the European, or we actually redeveloped the European Poker Awards, where we celebrate all these poker players all over the world, events online, it's on TV, blah, 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 spend a fortune into this. And the more I was going into that, the more I was getting closer to the sports industry. And eventually we launched something called the Global Poker League, GPL, which was like a NFL, NBA, UFC inspired new sports franchise or new sports business. Right. And raised money for that, lasted 1 year, had 12 teams, had 12 teams of 72 players totally. We paid the players. We had a TV studio in Las Vegas, TV studio in Malta. I'm not going to go into the details, but at the end of the season 1, we closed the season 1. Well, first we were broke as fuck, first of all, and secondly, we didn't have the audience that we wanted. But we learned a lot about running, let's say, a franchise, a sports business, etc. And that's the genesis of Socios and ChiliZ, because at that time, our question was, what can we do to monetize our audience, and what can we do to engage more our fans, the people that were watching what we were doing? And the more we worked on that, or the months after, the more we realized that there was a need for either us or some other franchise and IP owners to actually engage and monetize their fan base. And that's actually the genesis of what we are doing today. And instead of doing it for us, we developed a platform called socios.com that help and support big or not actually, but any sports team to try to engage and monetize their fan base. And we are developing features around that. That's more or less the whole story.
I love it. And it's, I mean, I didn't want to jump in because you were in such a great flow here. I love the stories of how you started and you know, really went all over the place here, learning and as you said, some worked, some didn't. You know, you take your hits as they come. And I recall our days when we used to work with Ladbrokes, when again, online gaming really started. We were their agent here in Asia. And we basically built their online presence. We had 150 affiliate programs, had a whole team of people running around, spending a lot of money everywhere until, of course, one market after the other went dark, and it all disappeared. But we basically were seeing all the bets going through. It was incredible. I mean, I have to admit that it was just a crazy world, and it still is a crazy world out there, that's for sure. And so, because you had your little fair share of that, and I have to admit, I didn't see any of that poker stuff anywhere in your CV there. So that's a great story too there. So
actually, I forgot. Funny enough, in my LinkedIn, when I updated it, I deleted some of this, like the old global poker index stuff by mistake, and I need to update it.
Yeah, you have to. But you know, that sounds like my glory kickboxing story. It's similar learning there. It lasted a bit longer. It's still they're out there, but it's burned a lot of money in the process. Now let's get into the world of ChiliZ and then on socials, of course. And here's my first question, because one thing, when I read what you're putting out there, of course, you know, it's all about blockchain. It's about, you know, using Ethereum, all this stuff. And we'll dig into all those things in more detail. But in reality, blockchain really only started being on a bigger radar for most people, probably 2017, 2018. But, you know, you're obviously were in there quite early. How did blockchain start for you? You know, where did that first appear on your radar? Maybe, you know, what year, and then how do you get into this? And, you know, obviously you did a fundraising on the back of it too.
Yes, so I have a love-hate relationship originally with crypto before even blockchain. Right. For me, I am a Web 1.0 guy. So literally from 1995, that's how I started with the internet. And I will one day tell you how I started with internet. There is some porn related, but I will not tell you more about this. Okay. So in term of crypto, I guess, like, I don't remember the first time I actually seen Bitcoin and read about Bitcoin, but I remember that for my honeymoon, which technically was then 6 years ago, I was in Iceland, and I'm in the front of this small bar in Reykjavik, and there is a Bitcoin logo, like you can pay with Bitcoin there. Oh, and right. I recall still that time that, oh, that's cool, you see, and there is this digital thing. And it didn't click too much. I didn't look more. I was like, that must be scammy. And I didn't know. And over the years, I remember in 2014, actually on my Twitter feed, if you go back and you search Alex Dreyfus and Bitcoin, and you go back in 2014, you will see me talking, saying Bitcoin is a scam and it should not be involved in gambling. Because it facilitates money laundering and there is no KYC and blah, blah, blah. So I was very much against it. Mm-hmm. Also because I was absolutely uneducated about the tech and the real, I will say, meaning of it. Mm-hmm. But then in 2017, early 2017, I started to see on my Twitter feed all these poker players and Calvinaire actually talking about crypto, Bitcoin, all the time. And because I come from the crypto space, the poker space, I was super exposed to that, also overexposed into this. Right. And I started to look at it and I was like, what the hell is this? And I remember Calvinaire on Facebook talking about how Bitcoin is going to go up. It's going to be at 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 5,000. And every time he was right, I was like, what the hell? I actually took screenshot of it. And then I started to look at this, trying to understand a little bit more. I never traded in my life. I don't gamble. I don't own any stocks. I don't own all of this stuff. So for me, it was more about trying to understand how it works. Started to look about it a little bit more in summer 2017. And while we were working actually on our own fan engagement, esports vision, etc., the more we were working into that, the more we were like, hey, but what if the fans actually own pieces of the teams that we're going to create?
Right.
And it all started like that, like having like kind of equity of teams that we will continue to develop, etc., etc. And the more we were going into this, the more we were like, okay, maybe we don't do it for us, but we develop a platform where you will have tokens that you have a share of influence. It's not anymore equity, which brings a lot of legal issues, securities, and all that stuff. Yep. But more like, hey, let's try to work on the fan engagement and stuff. Right. And that's what happened in December 17, at the peak, of course, of crypto. Yep. Of course, yes, it did trigger more like appetite and interest because, like, I've seen that in 1999 and in 2000, and for me, that did trigger, like, it forced me actually to have a look at it because I could not be left out of that. And we worked on a plan, and we said, let's do it. And the first week of January 2018, go back from holidays, go back to my team and say, guys, we're launching it. We are doing it. It's going to be called ChiliZ. And this is the plan. Let's write about it and let's go after it. And that's how it's kind of all started, by a lot of education, trying to read a lot and see how technology can actually be useful for what we wanted originally for us.
I love it. And it's interesting. The timing is so crazily similar to ours. That at that time we were building SportsFix, which was our ODT platform, right? And similar, we just saw there was something there where blockchain and all these things, cryptization and the tokenization, there was something there which was different and unique. So around the similar time, Larry, what you were just saying is just wild. In that year, we were doing the same thing, and I'll come to later what happened to us. But in your case, when did you then go out? Where's the ICO? And I know you it's public. You raised $66 million through a private placement, which basically means it's not a public ICO. Around what time was that? It must have been really early 2018 because the market really tanked very quickly after, right?
Yeah. So yes and no. So we because I came from the gambling space. I had that time 15, 17 years experience, network, whatever, in the web industry. So network was pretty broad. And we released our white paper and our expectation in March 2018. Okay. Or actually maybe mid-February 2018. We got our first, I would say, dollar of a private placement probably in March, and we closed it in July 2018. So it took us still like 4, 5, 6 months to do that. We were very lucky. We met the right partner at the right time as well that helped us to develop this, financially wise. And that was due to the network coming from the gaming industry. So there was a very strong connection there. But it was very intense. We were also lucky because Binance came to Malta, yet thanks to us, but still they came to Malta, so we get close to them. Eventually they invested a little bit, $1 million or so, and then that put us in the front of the highlights. Yep. So it was a sum of luck. Of course, it's a sum of luck that we provoked and we pushed. But still, everything was very much aligned. And in a way, I'm happy we didn't raise in 2017 because I would probably have burnt everything, thinking that, it's going to be always like this. Yes. And so I'm happy that we raised when it was already going down big time, right? Because it made it more difficult, but it also gave us reality. Yes. But to be fair, when we raised whatever is the amount of money we raised, that money shrinked significantly. Of course. In few months, yes. To the point that it was like, what the hell? First, why I didn't sell, I mean, I didn't liquidate because I always say that, oh, I will liquidate everything, and then you don't do it because you think it's gonna go higher, and then it doesn't, and then you like start to cry. And then you focus on what you know the best, which is developing and building. And it works.
Yeah. I know, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, as our part of the story, which isn't unfortunately as successful as yours, is that it took us too long. We spent probably 6-7 months cracking on this white paper, and I think we were, as usual, maybe we're trying to be a little bit too perfect. So by the time we really got in the market, we were probably August. I think July, August before we really got in there, and the market had just dropped. Every expert we've ever spoke to, and we had the usual crypto advisors, and we had a pretty good looking, sexy white paper there. Every single one said, look, guys, you should raise 30 million, 40 million easily. And somebody's like, what? That's all you want to raise? You should be raising much more. And so, so you believe some of your own bullshit, of course. And we were convinced we would. We didn't raise pretty much anything. We raised, very, very few, very little. And on the back of it, that really distracted SportsFix so much, or at that time, that later on that hurt us and killed us probably. But his timing is perfect. Is one of my favorite topics always in these conversations with other entrepreneurs, that how important timing is, and maybe to some degree that little bit of luck as well, as you maybe had it there. And like you rightly said, that 66 million probably became a lot less because all these currencies which you were paid in dropped through the roof, of course, as well. So I appreciate that's not the money you had anymore, or might not have now anymore, to do what you're doing. But you are doing a lot of really cool things, and that's where we're going to get a bit into now. So first of all, let's go a little bit really basic here and just get everyone to understand, because as usual, even though blockchain is maybe not as big of a flavor of the month anymore as it was a couple of years ago, where it was just everywhere, and so people might still remember ERC20 and Ethereum and all stuff. But let's go a little back. So you're using ERC20, which is Ethereum platform, for ChiliZ, for your own token, right? You've created the token, you created an exchange, right? So where you trade the product, right? So that's obviously really what ChiliZ was before we started talking more about Socios.
Yes, I mean ChiliZ always was and is still the token or the currency of the ecosystem that we are trying to build, right. And that's what fueled what we are doing right now. And when we're going to go a little bit deeper in Socios and the relationship we have with the football teams, esports team, or whatever, you will see that the ChiliZ currency token, etc. It's really for me, the word of token, and it depends in every languages, but it goes back to the arcade. When we go back 35 years ago, when you go in an arcade hall, video game hall, you buy tokens, and then you can play with these tokens in every single game that is in this hall. Here it's exactly the same. ChiliZ is the token of this whole that we created, and all the games that we have are not games in that way. They're a product, but the product of Barcelona, of Juventus, etc. It's in this whole ecosystem that we built, right. And it creates some like fluidity between users and clubs in this whole ecosystem.
Now, you mentioned earlier, and again, unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to read the old white paper, but there was a lot more focus on esports originally with ChiliZ, right? And what you're trying to do, which obviously now is gone more into sports again. So what was your real focus when you went in there? I know it was a fan engagement and a sort of consumer facing tokenization of assets. But what was the original story, which has now obviously changed maybe to some degree?
So the original story, still same, is we wanted to focus on esports and then grow into traditional sports.
Okay.
And what happened is the more we were working in esports, the less we wanted to work in esports for plenty of reasons. First, that as much as everybody was excited, it's $1 billion market, blah, blah, blah. We all read the news statistics and reports. The reality is this is a market that is driven by game publishers, and that the only interest for the game publishers is to sell more than their game. Yeah. And we realized quickly that you cannot develop anything into esports that will be valuable without being a slave or enslaved by the game publishers.
Okay.
And also the monetization is very low. Fan, yeah, sure, there is a lot of fans, there is a lot of users, etc. But they don't spend money, at least not in esports. They spend money in the game, but they don't spend money in what's around the game. And we started to realize that, wait a second, if our vision of trying to engage fans, etc., monetize them, doesn't work in esports, we will die. So when originally we were planning to go into the sports in 1-2 years after, and that's why in the original white paper it's written that, we actually did the other way around. We accelerated our plans into traditional sports. We started to talk to clubs, and guess what? It was easier to work. I mean, it was easier to talk to Paris Saint-Germain, Juventus, and all these guys than it was easier to talk to esports team. Because esports team, unfortunately, were unequipped. There are gamers that think at that time, and it's still a little bit the case, that esports going to change the world, and therefore they were super cocky and arrogant. It was also the big bubble of esports raising a ton of money at that time. But they had no product in a way. They don't have a lot of assets. And it was very difficult to engage with them. So we pushed more our luck into the sports space, traditional sports. We acquired, we always said that ChiliZ was like inspired from the socios, Real Madrid, Barcelona, etc. And we at some point, it was literally a weekend, I was like, maybe we can check one day, we can be called socios.com. And we realized that, wait a second, there is the socios.com domain was bought in 1999 by a Swiss guy, and they never used it. And he get it and never used it. So I managed to talk to him on LinkedIn or email, I don't remember. And over a weekend, the guy said, listen, I'm keen to sell it for you for 20,000 euros. I said, yeah, done, we do it. I send him the 20,000 euro on PayPal without any contract, without anything. And the guy gave me access to the domain. And then I started to also take the twitter.com/socios, which was used but unused. So I managed to convince, I don't remember, to be honest, how we got it back. And that's how the socios name came up, or at least the story started. And we started to say, hey, our sports/football venture will not be called ChiliZ, but it will be called socios because it's more consumer facing in terms of explanation. And that's how it started.
Ah, interesting. So now let's define, and I actually love the way you call it, the fintech fan engagement platform. That's a very sexy name already. If you're raising some more money, that's a very cool tagline there already. Now, what does that really mean? Let's explain it to the layman's of what does Socio do. And I know more about it, so we'll go along the lines here. But let's start with the basics. You're raising money by creating a token for a club, right? That's the basis of it. But talk us through how you convince Juventus and Barcelona and a few other teams to play with you.
So let's go back to the genesis. What do we do? The vision is very simple. 99.9% of sports fans, and that's pre-COVID, are not in the stadium of the team that they are supporting. Right. And sometimes they are not even in the city or even in the country of the team that they are supporting. Right. That's true, of course, for the global brand, but for smaller brand, it's also true for part of it. Right. So the question is, what can you sell? What can you scale? What can you make global as a product that could be interesting for a fan? And how can you develop that? And our vision was, there is two things that matter for a fan. One, it's being recognized as a fan. And two is to be listened as a fan, or at least have the feeling that you are. And so we came up with this idea that we sort of invented called a fan token, which is a digital asset that gives you the fact that, hey, I own this Barcelona token or that Juventus token. That's make me a super fan, a fan 2.0, whatever you want to call it, or a socios 2.0. And by owning this fan, not only I'm recognized as one of the official fan, but also it gives me benefits that are, one, being able to participate and having a share of influence when the clubs is going to ask questions to their fans and ask them to decide something. So that's what we negotiated with every single club. Mm-hmm. And the second one is a little bit of benefits, discount, merchandising, and participation, and all that stuff.
Right. So the first really is a share of voice, right? And I think that's the way you describe it as well.
Yes, that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
That's a big thing, which is quite interesting, right? Because a lot of people who obviously created utility token, it was always more for other transactional purposes, right? To use up the token. In your case, you're not using up the token, you're just using the amount of tokens you have to vote, correct?
Mm-hmm. So, sorry, drinking. So, indeed, and that's also ironic. When you think crypto, people think cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
But in our case, it's more like digital asset, or almost like an asset class for the sports.
Right.
And for us, it's about how can we what we call tokenizing fan engagement, fan sentiment.
Yes.
And so we create these fan tokens that are a limited supply for each club. Yeah. And you, as an owner of 1 or 1,000 token, have suddenly a say into what the club will ask today or tomorrow. And originally, actually, what we call fan token was originally called voice token, but people thought that we were creating a new voice system or telephone system or telecommunication system, so we pivoted into fan token.
Right.
And yes, these tokens are not a currency in a way that you cannot go in a stadium and pay with your fan token. Right. Why? Because then it means that you will target, again, the 50,000 people that are in the stadium already, and the clubs knows already how to generate revenue in the ticketing, F&B, and merchandising. They don't need me to add a layer.
It's easy to pay in cash or credit card.
Exactly. That's what I always hand up and say, guys, you know how to make revenue in euro, in lira, in GBP. What the hell you will need a new cryptocurrency to do that?
Yes.
So we try to kill this narrative that, it's amazing, we're going to create a token, it's going to be able to exchange it in my stadium. No, guys, focus on the 99% of your fans that are not in the stadium.
Right.
And for that, it's not about a currency. It's about you giving me a social status. It's just that we digitalize this social status.
Right.
Exactly. And that's more or less what we do and how it works. And so we started to discuss with these clubs, explaining, hey, you have fan base, we have an idea, we have a bit of money, we are developing a product, let's do it together, and let's try to monetize this fan base globally.
Very interesting.
It's a lot of education. It's a very expensive education. And eventually we launched our product almost a year ago now. Right. The socios.com app, the first version or the beta version. And now we have like 350,000 downloads. We have thousands of users that's spending money, buying the tokens of the team, trading them, participating to the vote. And we have, more importantly, more and more features coming up as well in the next weeks and months. And going back to actually your former idea as well of OTT and streaming, there is one thing we don't do is we are trying to focus only on what I would like to try to call like a fan transactional platform, meaning that we are not here to create a new OTT platform, streaming, content. We believe that actually this is or should be run by the clubs mainly, or by Netflix, or by DAZN, or by other platforms. But we don't want to go in that territory at all. We focus really on, hey, we sell these tokens. These tokens give you rights. These tokens give you benefits. We attach benefits that could be transactional. I think next week we're launching that, so it depends on when you're going to release it. But next week, if you own fan tokens of every club, you're going to start to have cash back on all the club's official stores. Right. And the idea is to generate revenue to the stores. It's to really focus on transactions. And that's also one of the reasons we are launching a Visa card where you own the Socios card. And that's one of the points I know we want to talk about. But you use that socios.com Visa card in Europe for now. And you send your salary or you send some money into it. It's a debit card. And every time you spend money in an Adidas shop, and because I know that you are a Juventus fan or you are another team fans, because you spend money in an Adidas shop, then you will eventually have more cashback, more discounts, more benefits. So our job is to help clubs, or support rather than help, support clubs to activate even more the relationship they have with their big sponsor, especially in the retail industry, by sending traffic and sending people in their retail store.
Interesting. Couple questions here. First of all, of course, how do you buy a token, right? How do you get one of these things? Talk us through that.
So Super easy. You download the socios.com app, which is free, of course. You create an account, which is free. Then you put your credit card details to buy ChiliZ.
Yes.
Minimum is €2, I think, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And you buy, let's say, you put €10. You get 1,000 ChiliZ for €10 for now. And with these 1,000 ChiliZ, you can immediately buy either Juventus, Paris Saint-Germain, whatever. In 3 clicks, it's done.
Right.
So it's not as simple as an in-app transaction because it doesn't fit in the in-app of Apple and Google, which is good because we don't have to pay 30%, which will not be possible because it's crypto. But so there is a process of putting your credit card details and all that stuff, which means also that we have to do more work in terms of know your customer, anti-fraud management, all of that 24/7 in multiple countries.
Right.
But that's, you download, you put your money, you buy the token, done. The next generation will be, though, by the end of the year, is we're going to have like sort of widget where you can also directly buy with your credit card on the app or the website of the clubs.
But yeah, I downloaded both. So I got Socios and I got ChiliZ. So ChiliZ is where I would trade it, obviously, right? And I can see the exchange rates or the rates for each token. Now, can I also earn token? If I'm a super fan, I do all these amazing things. Do I get free tokens as well, or it's purely a transaction, cash transaction every time?
When you do what? Sorry.
If I do something as a super fan, right? I promote my team. I do other things which helps my team in some fashion. Do I get free token? Is that part of the campaign as well, or not?
Yes and no. So usually what we do is we give, or the club rather, give free token to all their ticket season holder. Okay. So they send an email to the 40,000 people that are in the stadium, say, hey, this is your free token, go and grab it.
Got it.
Usually you have only 1 or 2% of people who's going to respond, unfortunately, at least for now. But we started with this to ensure that we don't alienate, let's say, the hardcore fans that are in the stadium by offering something that I have to pay outside of the stadium, let's say. So we give this for free. That's number one. Then we are adding all the gamification and the leaderboard and the rewards. This is happening this year. By the end of the year, we have more and more features. So the more you're gonna activate or you're gonna be present in the app and on the club, the more you're gonna get rewards out of it. Okay. Not necessarily tokens of the team, because tokens of the teams are actually valuable. So we have to be careful. Right. And some of course will get, but not everybody can get, like the Juventus token is $7 right now. So I cannot give away 100 tokens for free like this, especially that you can eventually convert them back to some valuable either euro or something else. So we have like some points. We call that Socios United tokens. And we're going to have more and more points related to that at some point.
Interesting. Yeah, and because that's always it seems to be originally, that's what we did as well. Right? We created all these tokens, and then you create fan engagement to help them drive it. Now, here's a couple other questions. Number one is, and I looked at it, so the Barca token, I think you had something like 20 million token, and then Barca was 40 million, Juventus was 20 million token, PSG 20 million. How do you decide the level of volume of token? Is that between you and the team, or how does that come out? Why is one higher than the other?
So we have a lottery system. No, I'm kidding. So yes, we decide we have 3 tiers, I think. We have the top tier like Barca, which I believe is 40 million. We have a second tier, which is a bit unfair as a name, which is PSG, Juventus, etc. And then we have others, which will be, actually, no, we have more than that because we have some teams who have only 5 million as well. So, well, anyway, I don't know exactly the tiers, but what I know is that we choose with the team. It's not in the contract. It's always a discussion once the contract is signed, we go into details. And yes, it depends of the social media reach. It depends of the real potential. And it's not the potential today. Nobody is going to sell 10 million, 5 million, or even 1 million token at $1 tomorrow morning. It's more about the fact that, hey, over 5 years, what is our expectation about the amount of tokens we could potentially sell and distribute? Yep. That's a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how do you set the pricing? Because again, if I look at the tokens right now, several were around sort of $5, and you had one at $3. Is that, again, set with the team, or you have a fixed, it always starts at $1 or $5 or whatever?
It always starts between $1 to $2 or €2 right now. So when we issue the token, there is a fixed price, of course, for a period of time. So when we issued Barcelona token, it was €2, and we sold for $1.3 million in like 20 minutes or something like that. And then the price fluctuates based on the demand. So sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. When Paris Saint-Germain was leading the way to the final of the Champions League, the token went up 3 or 4 times, I think. And it was just the fans or traders trying to be interested into the team. And I think the token is still pretty high, and that's fine. But we don't control that, obviously. It's
of course, that's free trading. And that's that's obviously the next logical question out of this. How much is it currently where you really have a sophisticated, let's call it the more sophisticated crypto community, right? Who understands the space and trades in Ethereum and Bitcoin and God knows what other currencies there. How much do you have them? And for them, it's just an extra little fun thing that it has a little more of a sexy name to it, right? And has something associated they can recognize versus the real fans. What's your own experience, or how do you currently define that?
So before answering this question, there is one question: is what is a real fan? In 2020, what is a sports fan? Is it someone that follows you on Twitter? Is it someone that bet on Ladbrokes, Bwin, 365, but have no relationship with the team? Is it someone who lives in Malaysia and has a fake jersey of Liverpool and yet still a fan because he's watching on Fox Sports or something like that? The fan description is very fragmented. There is fans. There is thousands of ways to define a fan today, and that's why we believe the concept of fan tokens and the fact that you start to become recognized. And of course, you cannot have 100% reach, but is valuable, and especially for foreigners fans. Now, today, we have 2 types of customers. We have the crypto enthusiasts who are also in general sports fan like everybody else, not necessarily Barca fan or Juventus fan, but they're sports fan. They understand the concept of being fan. And these ones are buying this as early adopters. Like in any technology, you have these geek and early adopters that's going to be more educated than you and me in a way, and going to start to participate in that. And that's actually right now more or less 50% of the users. Then you have the other users that are the more casual fans, and in that demographics, you still have the early adopter fans and you have the super casual / occasional fans. And these ones are buying tokens because they are a little bit more supportive of one or several teams. And these guys today represent up to 50%. And the goal is that in the next 3 years, they will be like 80, 85%. We will always have crypto enthusiasts, and in all fairness, the fans or users we are also onboarding are becoming crypto enthusiasts, so we are actually educating them as well. But the more we're gonna grow, hopefully, the more these casual and occasional fans are going to become a stronger demographics in our user base. But that requires education and that requires time. You cannot convince suddenly to the 1 million users, say, hey guys, look, it's so cool what we do. Barcelona tweeted about it, Juventus tweeted about it, PSG tweeted about it. No. You can spend 10 million euro doing marketing. You will still need time to educate the fans. So it's a matter of a journey.
And I totally agree with that. And again, because that's clearly been, I think, when we were doing it at that time as well, it was always the conversion, right? There is, the crypto people know that, and they know how to set it up. But I needed my IT guys to set up my cryptocurrency account. I mean, it was that complicated, and this is 2 years ago. And I probably have never used it ever since then again. So the good news is you have a very easy system, which you already explained earlier. But you also mentioned, I think last time when we spoke, that you are now opening it up to additional changes, right, on the bigger, exchanges in the world, Binance, etc. Is that all? When will you be able to be up live on some of those?
Hey, that's $1 million question, probably a bit more even. So for now, the tokens that we launched are traded on our ecosystem and our platform. In a couple of weeks or less or more, it's going to be started to be traded on other platforms. Not all tokens, of course, but some of them. And that's not really on us; it's rather on the other guys. And that will be the real beginning of the second phase of our business, meaning that the digital asset that we built will start to be available outside of our pure. It will be still our platform, but they will be tradable outside of us, and that will give more visibility to these tokens, more liquidity, and it's also going to be an acquisition tool because maybe. Not that we're going to be on Binance soon anyway, but let's say one day you have Barcelona on Binance. Yeah. Well, Binance has millions and millions and millions of users. Right. If suddenly they say, oh, that's cool, there is this Barcelona token, some of them is going to buy to trade it, buy and sell to trade it. And then statistically, you're going to have a percentage of these guys that going to say, oh, I'm a Barca fan, I'm going to buy it and keep it, and I'm not going to even use the Socios app because actually I can get benefits out of that. So it is also for us an acquisition tool, and we are in the retail industry. Till now, we have our own shop that was in a little one-way with no light street, and we're gonna start to distribute our product in bigger malls that are all connected together, and that's where we're gonna really start to grow.
Yeah, I have no doubt. It is about volume for sure, and having access to that larger ecosystem. So I do see that as a big opportunity. Now, a couple of last other questions here, and I'm also careful with our timing here. Is there a figure you can release or you maybe have released of how much money you have raised so far? Let's say if you take all the tokens for all the different clubs and IP owners you have, is there a magic number out there? You raised 10 million, 20 million, whatever dollars for them. Is there something out there you can share?
Yes, but it's not raising money. When you sell tickets, you don't raise money. You sell tickets. Here, when you sell jersey, you sell jersey. You don't raise money. Sure. It's the same. We sell a digital asset that give you benefits, access. It's not raising money. Barcelona doesn't need us to raise money.
Fair enough. So how much money have you generated through the selling of the token?
For now, it's 5 to 6. For the last 6 months, I will say it's $5 to $6 million, and I think it's going to be 8 to 10 by the end of the year. Okay. If we finish the year as we hope it will, and hopefully next year it will be obviously much more. Yeah. So that's more or less where we are.
Yeah, that's some good numbers already. And so obviously, and your business model is you're collecting tollway there, right? You're collecting fees from raising the money, and then of course in the transaction.
Not raising the money, selling the token.
Selling. So I keep saying raising, selling the token, and then of course in the transaction itself, once they get exchanged and traded. So that's your model. Now the clubs. Yes. Is there a benefit? I'm trying to think with it while I'm saying this here. Is there a benefit for the club when their token goes up in value? Not really, right? It's not that there is any further value for them in it, right?
No, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the only thing, the club is, through us, liquidating tokens when there is enough demand. So this is a revenue stream. Again, imagine we printed 1 million jersey, and if there is people who wants to buy jersey, we sell jersey. If there is more people, then we, like tickets which have a limited amount in the stadium, well, we sell the tickets more expensively.
Yes, of course. So, exactly. I've answered my own question.
Exactly the same.
Exactly right.
So if there is a demand for it and the price goes up and it doesn't damage the price, then you sell it. If you don't sell at a lot, you sell it or you don't sell. It depends on the need of both the club and us. But the club, for them, it's a new revenue stream. They have global broadcasting rights, sponsoring, merchandising, match day, ticketing, all that stuff. Now there is a new vertical that is called fan tokens or digital asset, and it's a revenue stream.
Of course, and as higher the token goes, the more you collect for the future tokens you're putting out. So absolutely, so it does make a difference for the club as the token goes up too. So that makes complete sense. Very cool. I mean, like I said, I love the topic. I'm a big fan of this whole space. I do believe blockchain has its space in a general sense in business, and I think we're going to continue seeing more of it. And I do also see the tokenization. Is actually my favorite word of mine. I've been using it forever, and we were talking about it last time. That I think there is also other ways. I know you don't like the word raising money, but I use it for a crypto for crowdfunding, right? With the story I was talking about, how you would potentially could raise money, like for building a new stadium, right, where the fans help you raise the money by owning an asset or by owning a fractional asset of the fractional ownership of the asset there. That is to me still still, maybe not, it's obviously not what you guys are doing here right now, but I do think that could be future applications, again, because it is all about fractional ownership, right? This is really, and ownership maybe, again, can be defined, right? Right now, you're not owning anything in the club, right? It's not you owning shares in a team, or it's currently you own a share of the voice in your scenario here. But that doesn't mean that you can create a proper asset token, right, which is a different token class, of course, which is more, has more financial restrictions and other things, which then would be related to a, real physical asset. And I think that to me is exciting, and I have no doubt someone will crack this one day, and maybe we can be part of it. So, but what do you think? Where do you think is, besides what you're doing there right now, where can you, if you really dream now, dream big a bit here, where do you think the tokenization for football clubs and or sports in general could go?
So for me, there is always like a plan, like, you could have, tokens that are shares of a team. Man, that exists already with Manchester United. It's a listed company. Juventus is a listed company. Roma, Lyon is a listed company. So I don't believe that tokenizing shares is better for the fans. And I actually don't believe that fans should be exposed to the P&L and the ROI of a team more than this. No, in terms of special project, like you said, for a stadium or something that I would even prefer, it's not possible legally, but tokenizing the third-party ownership of a player, that's cool, and that thing that are a little bit more innovative.
Right.
For me, I always believe that innovation, technology, it's about innovation. It's not about replacing something that exists, and we need to use technology and blockchain to do things that didn't exist before, not just replacing them with a new word and a better hype.
Right.
And so that's where we should be creative.
I like that. Yeah, no, that's an interesting, and I agree with that. I think it's about adding value to the system by bringing these new technologies in. And in the same way, OTT, OTT is in some case replacing traditional television, but it is also adding, right? There's a whole bunch of things you can do in OTT which traditional television could never do, right? There is an interactivity part to it, right? You actually know the customer because they downloaded an app, or you had to register, which again on TV you don't. So I think there's similarities to that as well here. Now, since we are sort of coming a bit to the tail end of our conversation, what is it, being, where you are in Malta, which of course it's a very interesting space, both linked to crypto, technology and gaming, etc. Right? So I'm sure you have some interesting conversation with your fellow Maltesians or whatever you call each other there. What is it where you see the future of sports going and with what's happening around the world right now?
Oh, that's a broad question.
Yeah, I'll give you an easy one to pick whatever you like.
Yeah, well, in Malta, the blockchain ecosystem is actually a very small ecosystem, so we cannot really talk about that. Sports in general, I do think that sports is one of the rare industry that hasn't been disrupted by the technology. Unlike travel, finance, dating, everything has been challenged by the technology. Sports hasn't till now. I do believe it will, especially because of the change of the profile of the fans. Of course, it's a bit of a cliche, but old generation are going to obviously vanish more than the young generation. Yeah. Young generation are going to be more demanding digitally in their way they interact with the sports, whatever the sport is. So there will be a need of reinventing themselves. Not in the next 2 years. Of course, it's a generational change, but it will change. And that's where all companies like us and others can have a room to innovate and own that space in that way. And that's why we're spending thousands of millions of dollars to own that space.
Yeah, very cool. Alex, we could go on here, but this is a great time to wrap this up with your words here. Thanks so much for your time. This was really enlightening, and I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope we'll have some more of that in the future. So have a great day there in Malta, and hopefully we'll talk some more soon.
Thanks, Marcus.
Definitely. Cheers.
The Sports Entrepreneurs by Marcus Luer podcasts are a collection of interviews and stories. All content in this podcast is the copyright of Marcus Luer. Reproduction and distribution of the presentation without written permission of the owner is prohibited. All rights reserved.